Reactions to Apple's WWDC keynote. This is MacVoices. This edition of MacVoices is brought to you by the MacVoices Slack, available to all patrons of MacVoices. Sign up today at patreon.com/MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, it's only a few hours after Apple's WWDC keynote, and we have a full panel to talk about. Well, we'd love to talk about everything, but I think what we're going to do is try to talk about some of the things that most impressed each one of us, that we thought were the most interesting. We're going to go around the room, find out who's here, and then go from there. So first up, coming to us from a hotel room, Mr. David Ginsburg. David, welcome. It's good to have you.
Good to be here. Yes, I ended up on the East Coast, and you're in my home in the Central Time Zone. So, go figure. But here working and couldn't miss the show. So I didn't go out to dinner with the team, and I'm here because I'm just so dedicated to MacVoices.
Well, that's great. We appreciate it, David. We definitely appreciate it. Mr. Jim Ray is here with shades of WW past. Jim, good to have you. Okay. that was quick.
Silent movies.
I salute you.
Yeah. Jeff Gamet is here. Jeff, welcome. Great to have you as always.
Chuck Joyner, it's great to be here with you.
Yes, in my hotel room.
That's right. It's great to be here with you in your hotel room.
Yes. MacVoices from the hotel.
Yeah, it's all MacVoices after dark now.
Yeah, really. Warren Sklar is here very bravely running a machine that he has already installed betas on. And he's only had one hiccup so far. Warren, good to see you.
But I'm kidding. All's good. I was making a joke. No, everything, we're having a good time. WWDC was good. And excited to talk about it.
All right, sounds good. Frank Petrie is here as well. Frank, good to have you.
Thanks for having me. Nice to see you're out in the sunshine, and I hope everybody enjoyed today's event.
I'm right there with you, and we'll find out as we go through this. Mark Fuccio has come this time with a news-oriented background. Mark, welcome.
Thank you, Chuck. Hello, fellow panelists.
Brittany Smith is here. And Brittany, it looks like you have a different camera tonight.
It's the same camera. It's just a different location.
Oh, okay. Well,
I'm not suddenly on the beta on my Mac and using my phone as the camera, I promise.
There's that cat still there.
Yeah, well, you may want to take note of the lighting because you will look extra great tonight. So
thanks. It's the window.
It's a window.
Kelly's dining room.
Oh. Well, I'll use that as a segue to welcome Kelly Guimont. Kelly, good to have you.
And you're muted.
You're muted, Kelly.
I am using a phone as my webcam, but I haven't installed a beta or anything. So I'm just sort of doing it the old school shipping software way because I'm apparently not living life on the edge at this moment. Apparently I should be coming to you from my dining room more often because that's where Brittany's sitting and she looks great. So.
Okay, fine. Go behind that door.
Yeah.
So that's guys, after dark, Frank.
Yeah.
I've got clearly very easy to entertain.
I know, but I'm not going to use the line I'm thinking of.
Chuck started it by broadcasting and inviting us all into his hotel room. Like this is really fun.
Yes, that's true.
Well,
that's another story.
There's two hotel rooms here, so
yeah.
We got to go run back and forth.
The party is that big.
Yeah.
Holy jeez. I was going to try to jet with me.
I was going to try to keep this under control, folks, but it's just not happening. Hey, we had a really full keynote today. I would say arguably one of the fastest and most complete keynotes that I recall in a while because it seemed like there was something for everyone. So we're not going to try to go through everything that was announced simply because you can go and watch the keynote. It's playing right now live on Apple's site. Go and watch it if you wish. So I'm going to go around just ask folks sort of randomly, give me one thing that really impressed you and why. And since it is Dub, I'm going to ask Jim Ray to start us out. Jim, what was one particular thing that really hit you between the eyes?
I think the one thing is that there was no one thing. So like 3 years ago was Swift UI, and that was like the big theme. 2 years ago, Apple Silicon, and that was the big thing. And this year there was, it was just like, 50 little things or, whatever. There wasn't any really big things. But I will mention that Apple did announce a new computer with a touch bar today. So who had that on their bingo card?
Anyone did.
I'm confused.
No.
It's a really big fat touch bar, and you can use it in portrait or landscape.
The 13-inch, the Mac Pro.
The 13-inch M2 Mac Pro has a touch bar.
They didn't change it. Yeah.
And
it does.
Didn't really mention it.
Yeah.
I was kind of like looking at it in the slides and like,
I think they probably
Does the product photo has it like at such an angle that it's hard to tell?
It was hard to tell, but
they just got it to show. Yeah, they
I
just
did
got
see
to
it
show and put the
confirmed.
M2 in there, though, right?
Because they didn't want all the nerds to talk about the touch bar.
I thought the camera thing was really cool. That was something that jumped out at me. Obviously, M2, it was kind of like, it seemed like that, should be like a huge thing, and kind of was just another, we got a new processor. All right, next.
They did spend a long time on it, though. I mean,
did they? I mean, what's a long
Not
time?
really.
Not
My
that
brain
long
was
time.
mostly fried by then, but they did talk about it, and
What
they
are they
went
gonna-
into the lab.
Yeah, but what they're going to say, they said what it was faster. They gave you a percentage of it, of 18%
And they
faster
moved
the
on.
M1, and then they moved on. What
power
else?
usage
Yeah,
and
that was about it.
Yeah,
they
what
talked
else-
about
what else
power
can you
usage
say?
and transistors and a number of things that like don't ever really seem to matter to me, but they really wanted to talk about them. So that's the only reason I remember it, is because I'm like, I don't really need any of this. So I don't
it's
know
the same as last.
why.
Because it hasn't changed much. It's basically the same
it kind
thing.
of seemed more like the M1.2 to me.
What I didn't hear is if they made the Mac 13 any different than the new Air, and what's the difference? Because
Really.
Well, the new Air has it's a new, it's a new metal. It's got it's got,
performance wise, because last year the Air versus the Pro 13 was tough, right? Everybody was not getting. People were trading in the Pros for the Air because it was
I
cheaper.
think for performance they're similar, but the new Air, it has MagSafe plus two USB-Cs, whereas
Plus it has a Retina display.
They both do. Yeah.
It had a Retina display last year too. It has a notch now.
Right.
It has.
But last year, the difference, the decision between the Mac Pro 13 and the Air 13 was a tougher decision than this year. Because this year you're getting a whole different computer with the Air. Like if I was going out today to buy either an Air, the new Air, or the new Pro, I would definitely not get the new Pro. It looks like the last year's Pro, and the new Air looks great, and it has MagSafe.
I feel like it's the spiritual successor to the old MacBook Pro that didn't have a Retina display and still had, replaceable RAM and a CD-ROM and
Some people are saying it's sort of like
spiritual successor.
Some people say it's a marketing thing to have that thing there. It's not really even nobody's gonna. Not a lot of people are going to buy it, but it's a lot of people are going to say
they will.
But a lot of people say,
and then they'll say to me, "What? Mine's a Pro. Why can't it do this thing?" They put Pro in the name.
Right, because I think if you're buying the Pro, I think what's going to happen if you're going there to look at the 13-inch Pro, Apple's going to say, if you need to do this and this, get the 14 or 16-inch, and if you need to do this and this, get this Air. I think it's going to be something that they're going to try to.
I'm talking to you on a 13-inch Pro.
I'm not saying it's a bad
It's
computer.
pretty pro. I'm not.
Well, that's the thing. Look, they put the M2 in the Air, so they almost had to put it in the 13-inch MacBook Pro.
Did they?
Wasn't the
or discontinue it
Intel based until today?
Say again, Mark.
Wasn't the 13-inch Intel base until today, or was that?
No.
It was an M1.
My work,
All right,
my work
so I agree with
computer is
Chuck.
a
Yeah, they had to drop
13-inch 13
Well,
inch
except
M1 Air
they
from
do.
last summer. Why it's continuing to be like, why we needed another one that sort of is but isn't, but has the same name but isn't quite the same thing, is just confusing. And it's going to be even more confusing for people who don't have one of us as a member of their family or of a social circle where we are around to offer advice for stuff like this, because it's weird to have a 13-inch that's better than a 14-inch, but not quite as good as, but way better than. But there's also this other one that's M1.
Right.
Like,
but who's going to, is anyone
How
else
is it
going to
better
recommend?
than the 14-inch?
Hold on. Is anybody, if anybody wanted a computer, is anybody can recommend the 13-inch new MacBook Pro? I'm not. I'm going to save $100 and get the Air.
Oh,
or
absolutely. I'd
spend
recommend
$300, spend $400 more and get the 14-inch Pro. It's a lot more powerful with more ports.
I would have to look at exactly what all the difference are. Listen, don't forget, this is a keynote. I mean, it is not a buyer's guide. So we're all going to have to take a good hard look at the specs, and see. I don't know what the exact capabilities are. I mean, one differentiation is the touch bar, like it or not.
Mm-hmm.
MagSafe is a differentiation. M2 is a differentiation.
No,
so I don't know.
M2 is not a differentiation.
Any
They both have
MagSafe isn't
M2.
either.
Excuse me. Yeah.
They both
well,
have
between
they both have the MagSafe too. No.
No.
Well,
Yeah.
it's
No,
one of
the
the buying.
13-inch
It's one of the
does not
buying
have
decisions.
MagSafe.
Right. The 13-inch Pro does not have the
Yeah,
the
But
Do
it
you want
does
an
have a
M1?
fan. That's a differentiation.
Do you want an M1? Do you want an Air? Do you want a Pro? Do you want an M2? All of these are different things that are going to lead you down different paths. And like the number of SKUs from this is going to end up being a disaster. Like for a mere mortal who walks into an Apple store and says, I need a new computer. I want a new laptop. Like,
and there's
this is going to be
well,
too
they just
hard.
added
Like a
one
MacBook
SKU.
Pro.
Actually,
I'm going to send
think-
everybody I know to get the Air. That's what I'm thinking.
Okay, give it up, Warren. Mark, and we're going to have to go to notes in the chat. So
Oh, we got to get in
because-
the corner.
Okay,
this is tough.
I think that when you look at the cost for the product instead of what it's named and what its spec is, I think a lot of people are going to be differentiated by price. Now there may be some pros out there that may be ambivalent, but I think for a lot of ordinary users or back to school people, et cetera, I think that price will be the determining factor, because they'll say, oh, it's 13-inch that or 13-inch this, and I don't quite understand all the technical differences between the other ones, but this one's a couple $100 less for the configuration I want. Boom, that's the one I'm going to get.
Yeah, Jeff, you just said something interesting in our chat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so would you like to repeat it?
Sure.
He said pants.
I said it's like Performa and Centris all over again. And what I mean by that is that Apple is now setting up their Mac product line where it's getting confusing for the average person to figure out what Mac they actually need, right, and what the differences are between the different models that they might be considering.
Yeah.
I find this fascinating. David, go ahead. I'll let you make your point.
No, I was just going to talk. You were talking about the MacBook Pro, the 13-inch, and I mean, it's. I don't think it's even more than a year since they introduced the M1 MacBook Pro 13-inch. It was popular enough. I mean, people were buying it. Then they out of the blue they announced the M2, and it has a touch bar, which is Jim just touched upon that earlier, and it's like, wait, I went back and looked, like, holy cow, it does. So I mean, we all thought that Apple was going to abandon the touch bar, and they didn't. So I can't not say I wouldn't recommend the 13-inch. It all depends on the person that's going to be wanting to use it. But it from watching the keynote, I'm fresh watching the keynote. I mean, I just finished just about the minutes before we started up here. So it was, they were saying that this machine has some pretty decent power, comparatively speaking, and for a much more budget price, but is a pro processing machine. The Air's got an M2 as well, but Air's a little different. But I think I would recommend this if somebody wants just basic but a decent laptop and not have to spend the big money for a MacBook Pro and the 14 or the 16. So,
did you notice too that that they mentioned education pricing on the M1 Air, and that makes me think that that's the target. You know,
and they also still have the old Air.
Right, they're going to continue to sell the M1 Air as well.
That's what I mean. Yeah. So, I just wonder if they, we hear so much about Apple needs to drop their prices, and people don't want to pay the Apple tax for everything. So is this their way of doing it? Just like they did with the Apple Watch. They dropped the prices and let the older models in the lineup. How popular they are, I don't know.
Selling Series 3 and it won't run WatchOS 9.
Yeah, the Series 3 is on the stuff.
They should stop. I bet that's going to be pulled. They just haven't done it yet.
Yeah,
that's on the topic.
My initial thought was that's why the store went down, was because that was the thing that was going to go away. Once I saw that and hadn't seen that the store had come back up yet, and saw that WatchOS 9 wasn't going to run on Series 3, I figured that it's because the Series 3 was not coming back when the store came back. It was going to not make the cut.
Yeah.
So I get the impression that you all weren't impressed with the M2. And Kelly, I'm surprised because you're a little more technical.
No, I'm super impressed with the M2.
Okay.
I was, and
Same.
I said that they spent time talking about it, and I'm glad that they did. I think the rollout was weird, like in the way that they did it through the keynote presentation, because it was like, wait, you just told me about this hot new processor, and like it's so amazing that now I can get a computer that's blue, that's not going to be the same blue as any other thing that you make that is currently blue, because why would you make that make sense? And yet then all of a sudden it was, we also have this other machine that has a touch bar, but we're not going to tell you about it. And, and it's going to do this other thing that's 13-inch instead of 14-inch. And it just sort of felt, I don't know, kind of herky-jerky. Like the rest of it felt like it flowed really nice, and that just sort of felt wrong somehow. I'm super excited about the M2. I really wish that they had spent a little more time on rolling that out, and maybe not worrying about a 13-inch machine that's just sort of, it kind of felt like we have all these unibody bodies for the old ones somewhere, and we're just going to put processors in them like we used to talk about. Why aren't they changing the connector on the iPhone, or why do they still make one with a home button? Like they did all that R&D and they've got it for free, and so they're just going to use it as long as they can.
Right.
The M2 looks really impressive from a regular standpoint. Like if I thought that there would be somebody who would give the M1 that I'm talking to you now from, the OG M1 13-inch MacBook Pro, I would go get one of those M2 Airs, a nice blue one with the coordinating cable. And did anyone else notice that now you can get a power brick from Apple with 2 charging ports? It's like Apple finally realized that there's somebody out there who bought more than one slab of glass from Apple, and they might all need charged at the same time.
But that one felt a little passive aggressive to me. It was like Apple saying,
because there should be
you want 2 or you want 2 ports on that? Fine, we'll give you 2 ports on a 35-watt charger. Take that.
Yeah,
exactly, Jeff. Exactly.
It was a little. Somebody rolled out and chose violence the morning they decided that was going to be that power brick. Luckily, because it's USB-C, you can go buy a nicer one from someone else that has way more throughput that will make that happen for you.
No. It's going to be the cloth of this year. They're going to sell out.
Somebody else said the same thing.
Tomorrow, there's not going to be any left in stock until like 2003.
Yeah, confirmed. There's a new.
There's
an M2 cleansing cloth, right, for the notch. And like the notch and knot was also a weird decision. But I'm excited about it because I'm glad to see it continuing to evolve. I'm glad to see that more is coming to the M processor, that the innovation is continuing to happen. It's really nice to see, and I'm looking forward to it. Like I said, I wish I could get my hands on one. I would like that very much. I was glad to see it, and I was glad to see that they had continuing, like evolution and update. It felt like there was a lot of refinement in this particular keynote overall. I know we're not to like final thoughts or anything, but like overall, it felt like a lot of refinement, which was kind of what we wanted, was like things that we've given you, we're going to make them work better now. And some things that are like huge that came out of it are like refinements to things that already exist, like doing better things in messages, doing better things in mail, stuff like that. Like mail is a known quantity, messages is a known quantity, and we're adding a little bit of extra stuff to those things, not overhauling them, but making them a little bit better, a little more easier to use, that kind of thing.
So let me get the chat room in here, because this will help take us to the next topic. And also it's a point that, needs to be addressed. Mark in the chat room says, speaking of pricing, MacBook Air seems close enough to iPad Pro pricing that I wonder why someone would get an iPad Pro at this point. Or am I missing something?
It depends on your use case. I mean, the price points can be about the same, and you can have very different use cases. So that's what it comes down to for that.
Yeah. Are you going to use the efficiency cores or the graphic cores?
Well, not only that, but the thing that I don't know about you all, but I tend to forget about it because I've already got one, and that's a few $100s more, and that is a keyboard. If I'm doing heavy keyboard work, I'm not going to want an iPad Pro, as great as it is, unless I'm going to spend the extra money to get that keyboard. So, but Jeff said it, or Frank said it, somebody said it. It's the use case. It depends on what you want.
The right tool for the job is always going to be the right tool for the job, and it depends on what the job may or may not be. And as an ancillary device, maybe in some cases it makes sense, if this is going to not be your primary machine, maybe the MacBook Air is the right thing to be your satellite device. Maybe the iPad Pro is the right thing to be your satellite device. It's going to just depend. And if most of the time you don't need a keyboard, or, you can get like a little Bluetooth jobby and use that instead, then, on the occasional situation where you need one, then maybe you're all set and maybe it's not a big deal. And that's going to be the thing that's going to, make a difference for a lot of folks, is figuring out, which move is the right move.
I want your brain to explode. Listen to the latest Mac Power Users podcast that Federico Ficcici was on, and listen to him in great detail for like an hour, go into how fantastic the Mac is. And it's like my whole universe is, unbound.
Yeah, especially he's the big iPad guy.
Right, exactly. And it's just like, what?
Well, so did we see another move here today toward making the iPad that much more Mac-like? Especially given that, what was it? Stage Manager applies to now Mac OS Ventura as well as iPad OS. So, this is a feature now. This is a feature now is debuting on both at the same time.
Right. First time they put a feature between Mac OS and iPad OS. For a few times I watched that iPad OS segment, I was very impressed to see what they did, having that Stage Manager to work. It was very, very seamless moving apps between multitasking, being able to drag things over into different windows. And the same thing on Mac OS. I love the fact that someone was able to drag something right into Final Cut Pro, and it came right in and had the titles and everything right in there using Stage Manager. So I think this technology that was you were asking for an impressive the new features. I go between both those OSs. That was very impressive.
I don't think bringing in the titles had to do with Stage Manager. I think Stage Manager is window management.
That's what I meant. It's when it was able to move that into FileMaker, into Final Cut, and then be able to work with it after.
I said there was, no big, huge thing, but Stage Manager on the iPad maybe is.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, well, they've kind of buried it at the end. And, it seems like they could have spent a half an hour on that. And I'm really curious to see more about it and play more with it, because, that's like a huge, you can resize windows. You can, have, windows in front of each other. On an iPad, is that even an iPad anymore?
Yeah. I couldn't figure out it depends on how easy it's going to be to do. Like how
right.
how hard is it going to be to
pudding,
operate
but
that?
that's like really and ambitious.
But he was doing with the keyboard and mouse. I think you need the keyboard and mouse because I tried on my Mini after I updated and I saw nothing.
It's not a feature that's available for the Mini.
No,
Nope.
Yeah,
it's got to be Pro.
And does it work on any?
How the hell
does
does
it
it
have to be
know
an
it?
M1 Pro?
Has to be an M1.
M1
Which is the most recent
so it won't
Air
work on
or the most recent Pros.
Air or Pro, right?
Yeah,
That's-
M1 Air or
That
M1
explains
Pro.
it. All right. So this is the first time they've done that, right? They've
Well, that's
separated a
disappointing.
feature. They separated a feature between iPads on the same version.
No, they've been doing that with the iPad Mini for a while.
But-
No,
Yeah,
Like what?
yeah, but there's a lot of iPads that this isn't going to be for. So that I guess
Yeah.
that gets back to Mark's question in the chat. There have been over the last several years a lot of people saying, "Why would I pay all that money for an iPad Pro?" And so Apple's trying to give them a reason.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not good.
Well, if you take it seems to me that as these platforms evolve, yes, they are getting closer in terms of functionality. I think the essential difference may be what is your primary way to interact with it. If you want to interact, more with a keyboard and mouse, boom, you're a Mac territory. If you want to touch the screen and maybe use a tablet for all sorts of hand-based operations, then the iPad Pro is probably your right machine. But again, I think as Jeff was saying, it goes back to there's very different use cases, and I really maybe overly boiled it down into sort of the essential differences I see that will maintain as this goes forward. But we'll see what happens. Because don't forget these past couple of quarters, the iPad has been extremely supply constrained and down in unit volume, whereas the Mac has been up. So I'm sure that was all deliberate allocation decisions at Apple management, but they're two different devices.
It just comes down to the right tool for the job. It's the same thing that I said before. Like,
Right.
If what your satellite device is something that doesn't necessarily need a keyboard, and you're looking for something that's an iOS experience that is
stay
maybe
in touch with ease,
primarily something that you're using that you don't need to type on the keyboard, you can do that. You have the Mini as an option too. Now that the iPad Mini is an M1 processor in it. So there's a lot of ways that you can get something with an M1 processor in it and have it be a very different interaction mechanism or use case, depending on what you're trying to do. So, if you are somebody who needs a lot of storage, maybe you're a photographer or somebody who shoots a lot of video and you need something as an ancillary device in that workflow, then you're golden with something like an M1 iPad, which is mostly a display that you're going to use for things, as opposed to having to have a whole lot of computing power behind it. So the center stage stuff, or not center stage, the stage manager stuff seems like it might be a good way for some of that to happen, depending. I'm not really sure, but like I have an M1 iPad and I really, really like it. And I use it for completely different things than I use my M1 MacBook Pro for. So I like it, it's the right tool for the job. And I can see where, somebody can spend a whole lot of money on an iPad Pro and not get something, and get a device that's very different. And, on paper, that same $900 or $1,000, depending on, how spec'd out things are, will get you a very different device. And it just depends on what it is that you want to do with it.
One thing that can...
Jim, hang on, let me throw this in and then go. But the notes I had for the iPad or for the new version of the iOS, the multitasking part, which we're talking about Stage Manager, the virtual memory swap, and the full screen support. So now the only thing you don't have is a keyboard, and you can easily add a keyboard, third party or Apple. And now suddenly the iPad looks a whole lot like an even more powerful mainstream productivity machine. I'm sorry, Mark or Jim, I interrupted. Go ahead.
That's okay. Maybe I interrupted. I was going to say the one thing that concerns me now that apparently only a really small fraction of the iPads out there are apparently going to support this new multitasking thing. And I saw, was looking through the videos for WW this week to see what I wanted to watch. And I believe I saw that there was one about how to, take your iPad app and, make it Stage Manager ready. So that maybe there's some changes that, to do that well. And, if it's only a small fraction of iPads that will do that, then I'm starting to worry that it's a touch bar kind of thing that developers won't put the effort in if it's, only 3% of the iPads out there, have it.
In the chat room, Barry says Stage Manager looks cool, but it still seems like a bunch of overlapping window clutter, only divided into subgroups. Yeah, maybe so, but I'm kind of excited about it because I know how cluttered my machine can become with different things, and this feels like a way that this feels like something I definitely will really use, and we'll see how it goes in reality.
Do you have an M1 iPad?
Yes. I was talking about the Mac side, but now the two experiences are going to be very similar. Kelly says it gives me strong Stacks vibes. Yeah, well, there is that.
We took your stuff and we put it all in piles for you. Aren't we helpful? Which honestly terrified me, and I never turned it on because it freaked me right the heck out.
But you can screw a Stacks any way you want to have it set Stacks.
Well, yeah, but the whole point of it is like, if you don't want to do it the way Apple wants you to do it, then if you don't do it the Apple way, you can't do it at all, basically. Like,
you can pick it. You can pick like, maybe I'm crossing hairs here, but you could ping, separate from JPEGs, from PDFs, from pages files, and it doesn't in those kind of stacks.
Yeah, but maybe I want like all the different versions of a single file or something, and like there was something about it that was like, oh yeah, you can't do that, and I'm like, that doesn't seem like an unreasonable thing to want to do, and so I just never turned it on, and it sort of stressed me out to know that it was a thing they really wanted me to do. I am looking forward to, because most of the time what I want to do on my iPad that I cannot do, that I can do on my Mac and do on my Mac all the live long day, is flip between two apps really easily, or be able to see two windows at the same time very easily. And split view is sort of awkward to get into. It's awkward to get out of. And switching between them with the bar on the bottom seems to only work with varying degrees of accuracy. Is it afternoon? Is it morning? Have I washed my hands recently? Whatever kind of like weird sort of environmental factors go into all of that. Have I chanted the appropriate chant to make things switch back and forth smoothly? Like, all of that seems sort of weird. And so what I would really like is, like they showed, like, here's a window, and then I can look at one, I can look at the other one, double check my work, whatever it is I'm trying to do, and then move on with my life. And that is the most basic of things that I feel like the iPad, even before it was M1, even before they put, a desktop class processor in the Pro iPad model, was something that the iPad was totally capable of hardware wise, that the software never actually really utilized very well. And that's what I'm looking forward to. This is like the closest I've come to wanting to install a beta on my daily carry device.
And you
which
have
would
an
be
iPad
my
Pro
iPad. Like I'm.
You have an M1 iPad Pro?
I have an M1 iPad Pro. And I adore it, and it's such a good device. And I'm like extra frustrated that last year's iPad OS didn't really give me a whole lot that was kicking open the door to the horsepower that you sold me. Like, you've given me this Ferrari engine, but you will only let me drive it in first gear. Like, I know there's a Ferrari engine in there, and I know what a Ferrari engine can do. And you're telling me I can only drive in the school zone. And like, that's like a really frustrating thing. So, give me second gear. I know you're not going to give me sixth, but give me second gear, like for a while, and let me prove myself. And then, maybe I'll get third if I'm real good, and write a letter to Santa. Dear Santa Cook, here's what I want for Christmas. I've been so good this year. I want to be able to do a lot of those things. And I'm not even asking for like do all of exactly the same things that my Mac can do. We had that conversation. I'm not trying to do that. I want to be able to do the kind of stuff I do on my iPad faster and more efficiently and just have it be great, because multitasking is weird, and making multitasking better will make my iPad better. And that's really all I want out of it is to try that.
So let me catch up with the chat room. Robert says an iPad is a very different form factor. You do things with a single slab that you would never want to do with a folding computer. And that's a very fair point. Mm-hmm. Brett says the iPad has always been the device between the iPhone and Mac OS. Today's update certainly moved the iPad more towards the Mac end of the spectrum. Good way to look at it. Multitasking on the iPad has always been difficult, so I'm glad to see Apple still trying to solve that. And, I agree with that. And Robert says, yes, multitasking has been awkward. I love they're trying something. It looks potentially of value. And that kind of says it to me too, Robert, that, Stacks, they tried something. Kelly didn't like it. Some people liked it. I didn't like it, but they didn't force me to do it this way. And so that's the impression I'm getting now from Stage Manager. They're not forcing it, but they're giving you one more way to try to organize things.
Isn't Stacks just a Finder feature?
Yeah.
So it's way, way less. It's just a thing in Finder. It's not, this is way more.
Yeah. But it was a thing that was like, if you don't do it the way Apple wants you to do it, then don't do it at all. And this right. kind of feels like that until I can get my hands on it and find out how it actually is going to work. So
yeah, and I mean, Apple's done this before, and in fact, all the operating systems have tried and done things. They tried to force you into a way that this is a way to do it. This is the way we think it should be done. And sometimes it's felt enforced, sometimes not so much. It just, here's something for you to try.
When they first showed Stage Manager on the Mac, and I didn't realize they were going to show it on the iPad. I guess some people did, but my first thought was, oh, this is an alternative to Spaces, which I don't use. So, and I have a feeling I'm probably not going to use this either, but we'll see. But I do like overlapping windows. Like right now, I've got like my Zoom meeting here. I've got the YouTube chat, and I got them all arranged. And again, going back to Federico Viticchi, I was listening to that, and he was like, "Oh, I hate overlapping windows. That they make him crazy, and he wants to tile them all the time." And he was explaining how he has all these shortcuts so that he never has to have a dreaded overlapping window. So different people are different. I really like, I always have like all these little snibs of, and I know where that is, and I can just like, oh yeah, bring that forward. And I've just, so that's the way I like to work. I like the overlapping windows. Between that and the dock, I can get to things real quick, but everybody's different.
Yeah. Jeff, I'm curious. I mean, you've been kind of quiet here about Stage Manager. Yes, no, good, bad, excited, not excited?
I was very excited when I saw Stage Manager shown off because, see, I'm the hybrid when it comes to the whole window management thing. And I'm closer to what Jim does. But Spaces could be a really great thing for me, but I don't want to use Spaces, or I don't use Spaces hardly at all because maybe it's just psychological. Zipping back and forth between desktops is just a weird thing for me. But being able to have a specific set of windows grouped together, so when I like do a Command Tab, I get the windows right there that I'm planning on working with, as opposed to what I do now, which is Command Tab to the app that I want to work in, then click the other couple windows that are going to be related to that, even though they're different apps. So yeah, I saw this and thought, yep, I'll use the crap out of that, and I'll use the crap out of it on my iPad, because this is the first usable multi-window or multi-app or multitasking interface that I've seen for the iPad. And then I was horribly disappointed when I looked at the specs and you have to have an M1 iPad Air or iPad Pro to use the feature. And I was like, well, crap.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess I'll use it on just my Mac, even though I really need it in both places.
Yeah. I've struggled with spaces. In fact, but only in the last couple of months have I learned to appreciate and love spaces. And I don't know what changed in my thinking, but I don't know. David, are you a Spaces user, and how do you feel about Stage Manager?
No, I don't use Spaces that often. I don't find them to be that too overly excited. But you asked me other something else to find maybe excited today, or
yeah, sure.
Well, I think we haven't really touched too much on iOS. I think the messages feature is just phenomenal. I mean, it was being able to edit, delete, and mark them as read and delete. That's huge. I mean, there's a time you want to just completely remove a message. You made a mistake. You want to just get rid of it or start over. You can do that now.
Plausible deniability. There was no message.
I will use mark as unread a dozen times a day.
But and the edit messages is great because we all make mistakes when you type something, and especially the way the autocorrect works. Now you can go back and fix it, which I think was a nice thing that they added with that. The other thing kind of stood out to me a little bit was CarPlay. I mean, that was amazing with I mean, I'm not going to have a car that has the dash that's going to be able to show all those features from CarPlay, but it sounds like CarPlay is going to be able to change the way it sends it to any car. I have a car; it's about 4 years old, so I'm looking forward to seeing how that works, and I may be tempted to try it with my beta iPhone just to kind of see how it goes. But those are coming. There's so many. Like you said, Chuck. This was packed. I mean, of all the days that we didn't get to be actually watching it live, this was the one I'm kind of bummed, but I'm glad I'm caught up now, and we got to experience what Apple really announced today.
The thing I wondered about CarPlay was what car manufacturer is going to go for that. I mean, to do it the way Apple is showing, basically the car manufacturer is going to become completely dependent on Apple. Like, in fact, how is this car going to work if you don't have an iPhone in it? It's showing all the speedometer and everything. So how's the car going to work if you've got an Android phone or no phone? And also,
then you just get their default interface, just like now. If you have a CarPlay compatible head, then you get CarPlay only if your phone's there.
Let's say that's true, but it's still, they're going to have, Apple is basically crawling totally up inside all the insides of the car. And, is Apple assuring these people that we're never going to make a car? Because if they're going to be a competitor, why would Ford want, Apple completely taking over the UI of the car with a competitor? That's what seems like a potential problem to me. That that this has got to have the car manufacturer's buy-in.
So it sounded to me that this is going to be a technology that that car manufacturers are slowly starting to adopt, and that's where it comes into play. I don't think you'll be forced to use CarPlay in order for it to display as they were showing from what I understood watching today, because there's going to be there's no way a car manufacturer is going to make it and expect that every single person is going to be wanting to use CarPlay in their car.
Well, so that means the car manufacturer has to duplicate.
Not
necessarily.
I'm just wondering what car look how long it took to adopt CarPlay, period. And that's just a little square that does entertainment. And now they're showing this thing that's like basically every user, you're going to control the air conditioning, you're going to see the tachometer, everything. And they're showing an example where basically there was no user interface from the car manufacturer showing. Now, probably since everybody doesn't have an iPhone, the car is going to have some UI that it has without CarPlay. But I'm just skeptical that a car manufacturer is going to be like, yeah, Apple, come in and we're gonna let you take over everything, and and then if Apple's thing screws up, then
Android Auto might be compatible too, because most of these CarPlay units are both, right?
Right, but that is only maps and entertainment. It's not
for now
wired into the dash.
I'm just wondering if Google's going to have some kind of partnership with them too, where you plug in your Android and it lights up all your screens too.
Yeah. But Jim, to answer your question though, I read an article later today, and I don't have it handy, but Jaguar, Porsche, I think Volvo, they had a whole list of companies that are committed to this. So it's already
that
there.
Doesn't mean that they're going to implement it the way Apple showed it today, though.
I think I'm just like CarPlay now. It's going to be an all or nothing.
They might tailor it for each manufacturer.
I don't see how that could be with the way this is so tied into the guts of the car.
I mean, the way
operation of the car.
I wonder if he uses the OBC port somehow. Because that's the only way I know how to do it right now.
Mark?
Yeah, the way I interpreted this, I saw this and I snickered. I figure, okay, this is just high concept stuff. We'll have to see what actually happens, for many of the reasons Jim outlined. But I may not be as pessimistic as Jim, because the sense I had is this was basically offering an alternative Apple-based UI, to the functions on a car, and I can see that sort of the high-end prestige brands that Chuck was mentioning, that they want to make sure that there's no stupid reason that somebody won't buy from them and they buy from their competitor, like, they want to use an Apple device, for their interface. So that's the sense in which I interpreted this. Do I expect Ford or GM to do it? Absolutely not. Do I expect Tesla, or Rivian or any of these other companies to do it? I expect they'll probably just all have some minimal sort of, support for whatever this version of CarPlay is called. But I think it's Apple just slowly extending the creep of their ecosystem and partnering with willing partners who think that it's necessary to, let Apple get its nose into their business.
And I should clarify that I would buy that car that they were showing. I loved it. I thought that in fact, I've thought for 10 years that, why can't the electronics in cars be like avionics in planes, where you can just pull out a segment and upgrade it. And, there are 55-year-old, 60-year-old Cessna airplanes running around with all glass navigation cockpits, and, the electronics changes so fast and software changes so fast. And, cars don't change, people don't buy a new car every year, or, and I especially don't. My current car I've had for 16 years. So I'd like to be able to update the software, which is, I think, what, Apple, if you had something like what Apple was showing, then your car could last longer, because you could upgrade it as new things became available. So I think it'd be awesome. I'm just, I'm just expressing technical, looking at it as a developer and an engineer, and like, and the fact that Apple, is supposedly going to make a car. Now, they've never said that, but but it's like the world's worst kept secret. Maybe it won't ever happen, but I would think that before car manufacturers let Apple take over the whole UI of the car, they would want some assurance that you're not going to be our competitor.
So let me pull the chat room in here. Robert says much of what they spoke of for Apple for CarPlay will be for future cars. I'm believing that CarPlay was a bit of Apple's dream rather than anything like the announcement of a new Apple product. Mark says a lot of that data is already available via a generic OBD2 connection. It seems like these cars are offering that option to allow CarPlay to display its view instead of the default built-in display. Cletus says seems like a lot of future things mixed in. Robert says Apple was showing how the auto manufacturers could implement it rather than what they would be doing. That's all about the future, and Apple does not know what they really will implement. Yeah, that's true. And Brett says, I think the point of CarPlay demo was to show how flexible the design will be for future cars.
And I think they did say, look for this in 2024.
Yeah, it's going to be a while.
Yeah.
Well, is 2024 a while, or is it around the corner? Not for cars. It's around the corner.
That's around the corner for EVs.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I mean, think about it. If as slow as the car manufacturers are to adopt things, Apple's got to be announcing this stuff now so that they can start to talk about it. And somebody correct me, but didn't whoever was doing the announcement of CarPlay say that it's in like some ungodly number of cars now, like 74% or something?
It might be in China. China has I don't remember how many car manufacturers doing EVs.
It was 90.
No,
90 something.
Talking about CarPlay. It was a pretty high number.
She said it was in the 90s, and then she said 70% of people said they wouldn't buy a car without CarPlay.
Yeah,
but it wouldn't be for cars on the road. That would only be for new cars.
Right.
I think that's what they said. Yeah.
90%
of new cars are coming with CarPlay.
Unless, as Jeff said in our private chat room, that there would be a market for third-party CarPlay head units.
I can totally see
I'd go for that.
Third-party dash replacements for the new CarPlay. And Jim, you're laughing, but I am absolutely serious. I mean, the number of people that flip out over wanting CarPlay in their car and wanting to have complete control over the interface is a lot higher than a lot of people realize. Mm-hmm. And if you have a car that doesn't support CarPlay today, the aftermarket for that is huge. I mean, like so much so.
If you have a newer car, then a lot of people are very against ripping out their head units for something like that. If it's an older car,
they want.
Yeah, but that's who's going to do it. Because if it's a newer car, it already has CarPlay, so you're not going to rip out a head unit. But the fact that people are willing to do this tells me that with the enthusiasm that people already have for the platform, there are people out there that will be more than happy to pay a couple $1,000 to get a replacement dashboard for their car so that they can add in the full CarPlay interface and it'll be a shut up and take my money thing. And
wonder if you could get like a big iPad-y screen that you could put in front of you, like on your car, just make it look like the thing that you demoed today to get the 3 screens going. So I want an aftermarket thing in front of me, an aftermarket monitor here and there. Seriously.
So somebody will come up with it. Yeah. Web got me. Per The Verge, Apple says 98% of all new cars already have CarPlay, and 79% of users consider the feature before buying a car. I mean, those are some pretty good numbers. There's no question. Our panel is back in the next edition of Mac Voices to talk more about the announcements at Apple's WWDC keynote and what they mean for the future of all the Apple platforms. That's next time on Mac Voices. I hope you'll join us. Until then, and as always, I'm Chuck Joyner. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with Mac Voices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.